This is the history that refuses to stay buried. The mirrors are already blazing with morning. 1,000 suns trapped in glass. When the doors of the Galerie de Glace groan open and the crowd parts like silk. Perfume hangs in the air. Orange blossom, ambergris, powdered hair, the faint iron breath of hidden swords. A rustle of brocade, a hush. Cardinals in scarlet, courtiers in lace, jewelers with damp hands clutching papers that tremble. At the center of the circle stands a man who has always known how to bow. Louis de Rohan, cardinal, prince of the church, grand almoner of France, heir to everything but shame. He bows now, low, exquisite, practiced, and when he rises he is holding a letter that will turn to smoke in his fingers. The king glowers. The queen's face is winter. Explain yourself, Louis XVI says, and the hall of mirrors listens. Rohan speaks of a necklace that gleamed like a captive frost, of secret service to Her Majesty, of debts taken on for love of the crown. The queen stares as if he has spoken a foreign language. I ordered no such thing, Marie Antoinette says, each word a knife. The king turns to his guards. In the glittering heart of Versailles, on a holy day, a cardinal is arrested for buying what a queen never asked for, and all of France's doubts suddenly find a face. If you want to help me translate more stories like this, don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. To understand why a necklace could shake a throne, you must first hear it breathe. The piece was nearly 2,000 diamonds, a dripping constellation forged by Paris's most ambitious jewelers, Baumer and Bassange, who dreamed it for a king already dying. Louis XV had wanted to hang the night sky around the neck of his mistress, Madame du Barry, an apology in light, a lover's bribe. Then smallpox took him in 1774, and a new age opened its eyes. The necklace became an orphan, a fortune in ice no one would buy. It was too large, too costly, too obvious, a scandal waiting for a pulse. The jewelers were ruined by their own brilliance, shackled to an object that glittered and drowned them. They begged, hawked, hinted, and at last dared what seemed unthinkable, proposing the necklace to the young queen. Marie Antoinette refused. She refused because she disliked Du Barry's ghost, because she wanted ships, not diamonds, because even she felt the drag of a nation's hunger at the hem of her gown. She refused, and the jewelers went away, and the necklace kept shining in a safe like a prophecy waiting for the wrong reader. Versailles loved rumor the way roses love sunlight. Courtiers mouthed verses, traded glances, slipped notes between fans. The queen's name spat by pamphleteers as l'Autrichienne, the Austrian woman, a slur and a sneer, traveled through streets on grubby paper that stank of ink and bile. They called her spendthrift, libertine, foreign witch. They drew her with sharpened pens in beds not her own. They counted her gowns like coins stolen from the poor. None of it mattered at first. She laughed, danced, played at rustic innocence in her pretend village, Hameau de la Reine, while beyond the park wall the price of bread learned to climb. The American war had eaten coffers. Tax exemptions kept fat men sleek. A fiscal storm gathered where courtiers only saw clouds painted on ceilings. In such weather, a glittering lie needs only an open window to blow inside. Into this atmosphere walked Jeanne de Valois Saint-Remy, who called herself Comtesse de la Motte, as if titles could be stitched like lace. She was a descendant, distant, threadbare, and resentful, of a royal line that had forgotten her. She knew the smell of damp straw and the taste of hunger. She also knew the city's new language of opportunity, wit, nerve, the audacity to pretend until pretense became reality. Versailles, with its obsession for bloodlines and glances, was a board where an agile player could move like quicksilver. She married a petty officer named Nicolas de la Motte. Handsome, pliable, loyal to whichever coin jingled. She took a lover, Rétaux de Villette, whose specialties included pretty hands, forged scripts, and the ability to breathe words that melted wax. She collected a courtesan named Nicole d'Oliva, with a face inconveniently similar to the Queen's, especially if you met her at night behind a veil. Around this cast she spun a web, and at the center she set a lark who had already flown too close to a flame. Cardinal de Rohan, desperate to be forgiven by a woman who would not hear his name. Years earlier, in Vienna, Rohan had gossiped about Marie Antoinette's mother, Empress Maria Theresa, mocking her piety and parsimony in salons too eager to laugh. The Empress heard. The daughter remembered. At Versailles his rank glittered, but his credit at the Queen's heart was closed. He coveted a return to favor, and Jean smelled that hunger the way a wolf smells meat under snow. She courted him. Tears at the right moments, small confidences that sounded expensive, innuendo that placed her as the Queen's secret friend. Her claims were absurd, that Marie Antoinette sought her counsel, that the Queen wished to reconcile herself with Rohan through an intimate intermediary. Yet absurdity is persuasive when it flatters. Jane showed him letters with a hand that looked like majesty, delicate, sloped, ringed with the aromatic courtesies of a woman raised on ceremony. The Queen writes as none can counterfeit, Rohan told himself, which was precisely the thing a forger needs you to believe. In August, when the gardens were damp as lungs at dawn, Jean arranged a miracle. The Bosquet de Venus, carved hedges, a glimmer of lanterns, statues sweating moonlight, was the stage. Rohan waited among rustling leaves while the palace dozed. Footsteps. A figure in a hooded cloak. A perfume he thought he had smelled once when the Queen brushed past at the opera. A face. Pale and high-boned, the tilt of a chin like a signature. Nicole d'Oliva, trembling in coach, lifted a rose and a few rehearsed words. Forgiveness, esteem, discretion. She gave him the flower as if it were a key. He fell to his knees. He kissed a hem. He stood up, married to a fantasy. That night did not last long. It could not. But it shone bright enough to blind him through everything that followed. Now the letters grew bolder. The Queen, on paper, confided that she wished to purchase, secretly, a certain unfortunate necklace for the glory of the crown and of France, but without the King's knowledge, who scolded her for expense. She wished the Cardinal, as a gentleman and penitent, to act for her, to take the necklace in his name, to advance the payments, to keep the secret. Rohan, drunk on absolution, agreed. Boehmer and Bassange were summoned by a prince of the church, who told them what jewelers dreamed to hear, that a queen had changed her mind. They showed him the necklace, a cascade of diamonds frosted into swags and patches. A river of light stiffened into geometry. He signed the contract that would be a noose. The terms were lavish, the schedule fanciful, the signatures a forgery. Marie Antoinette de France, it read. The de France, a phrase no queen used. But who argues with the hand that holds the seal, when it is a cardinal's hand, and the light in the room is so bright you cannot see the ink dry? Delivery was theater. The jewelers handed the necklace to Rohan's valet. He carried it, wrapped like a secret, through rooms where men would have sold their souls to see under the paper. It arrived at Jane's apartments,
and there the necklace met the knife. Nicolas de la Motte smuggled the stones to London in installments, seeing them transform from a single sin into many small ones that glittered across the channel, mounted into rings, sewn into hair, pawned for cash that vanished like breath on glass. In Paris, the jewelers waited for the first payment. It did not come. They waited some more. They wrote to the queen with care, with terror, with the righteous whine of men who have extended themselves for a dream. Marie Antoinette read their letter with a heat that cut through every polite layer of court life. The trap was sprung because the trap had finally touched her pride. In that August arrest in the Hall of Mirrors, every audience became theater, every mirror a witness. Rohan tried to speak. The king cut him short. The queen's fury, cold, Austrian, absolute, treated him like a stain on carpet. He was marched away through corridors that had once bloomed at his approach. Jeanne, pulled from her chair with the insolent efficiency of police who know exactly whom they want, screamed and scratched and lied at speed. The necklace's absence was suddenly a presence in every conversation, a glittering ghost that made eyes widen and fans flutter faster. Paris woke delighted. This was better than the plays. A cardinal in chains, a queen in a cloud of rumor, a fake midnight meeting in hedges trimmed like sentences. By supper, every table hummed with the story. And like every story France loved at that hour, it made the monarchy look foolish, hungry, and unclean.
The trial called itself a quest for truth, but truth arrived dressed as politics. The Parlement of Paris, law court, pride of the robed nobility, opponent of ministerial arrogance, took the case, not the king's private council. Marie Antoinette wanted a public burning. The magistrates wanted a public lesson. Witnesses paraded through a season of depositions. The forger with his ointment for wax and his arrogance for ink. The courtesan who had only to lower her eyes in the dark to convince a prince he was forgiven. The charlatan Cagliostro, alchemist and magnet for the credulous, whose name made pamphleteers purr. The jewelers wrung their hands and listed carats. The guards repeated what they had seen and not understood. The cardinal, poor peacock, insisted he had served a sovereign in secrecy and been rewarded with shackles. In the galleries, the city debated with its breath. Some believed the queen. Others believed what they had wanted to believe all along, that the Austrian woman swam in diamonds while children chewed wood to quiet their bellies. The verdict split the room like lightning. On May 31st, 1786, the Parlement acquitted Rohan. He was wrong, naive, vain, but not criminal, they said. The crowd outside roared approval. A prince of the church, misunderstood, humiliated by a capricious queen. What a tale to tell over wine. The court condemned Jeanne de la Motte to be whipped, branded with a V for voleuse, thief, and locked in the Salpêtrière. She struggled on the scaffold so wildly that the branding iron slid, burning her like an errant comet. She howled with a courage that too easily passes for innocence when seen at a distance. Rétaux de Villette was banished. Nicole d'Oliva was acquitted and slipped back into obscurity with the dangerous kind of fame that buys only invitations no one should accept. Cagliostro was expelled from France, trailing rumors like a cloak. The jewelers staggered on toward ruin, bent under the weight of their own genius. And the queen, who had desired justice like a sword, found that the sword had turned to air in her hands. What mattered was not guilt, but the impression of guilt, because that is what a monarchy spends in the marketplace of faith. The public read the acquittal
as a rebuke to the queen. Her enemies wrote as if she had stolen the necklace herself, as if the forgeries were only polite lies told to protect a woman who could not keep her own hands clean. The phrase, Madame Deficit, stuck. Truth, that stubborn mule, could not pull the cart of her reputation out of the mud. Pamphlets multiplied with a rat's fertility. Cartoons of a queen naked but for diamonds. Satires where she speaks slang through a mouth of pearls. Libels that etch lust and greed into the contours of her powdered face. In salons, the high-born laughed behind fans at the sight of a cardinal in irons. In the streets, the low-born laughed openly because laughing at a queen is a kind of revolution. She had not ordered the necklace. She would pay for it anyway at a scaffold where no jewels were worn. Jean escaped. Of course she did. Knotted sheets, a window, a disguise, boys' clothes, quick steps, a coach at the right corner. Then London, which has always welcomed the scandalous with a particular appetite. In England she wrote her memoirs, acid in sentences, drawing the queen as spider and herself as fly. A pose of innocence that convinces only if you have already chosen to like the liar. She died there in 1791, falling or flinging herself from a window, shards of glass like spent diamonds at her feet. Rohan was exiled to a monastery and learned the humiliations of moderation. The necklace, scattered and sold, glimmered on strangers' throats. Its story made of pieces now, too. Its curse democratized. Cagliostro met the Inquisition in Rome, and his magician's patter could not beguile a cell. The jewelers mended what they could mend. Tools, books, pride cut small enough to swallow. Nicole d'Oliva was poor, a shape in a doorway the city would pass without noticing. A ghost of the queen, who outlived the queen only briefly. And Marie Antoinette? The affair planted a splinter of distrust that festered. She paced in rooms stamped with perpetual spring while winter gnawed at Paris. She bought fewer jewels, more enemies. She bore children and rumor in equal measure. When the Bastille fell 3 summers later, when the king was herded back from Versailles to Paris by market women, marching under a sky that had learned a new kind of thunder. When laws were unstitched and stitched again, her name, which had once sounded like waltz and silk, began to sound like a verdict. In 1793, she climbed the steps of the guillotine. Those who watched swore she carried herself like a queen. Those who heard the blade speak swore it spoke for the people. A necklace that never touched her throat had become the rope around her reputation. And in politics, rope is what holds and what hangs.
We should widen the lens, because scandals are both magnifying glasses and smoke. The diamond necklace affair revealed fissures already spidering through the walls. A court that mistook ceremony for credibility. A legal order eager to flex against royal will. A print culture that could make and unmake truth faster than truth could walk across town. It showed how a cardinal, living his life in a hall of mirrors, could mistake reflection for reality. How a forger could sell a handwriting like a drug. How a courtesan could give the right rose at midnight and change history. How an empire built on appearances could not survive a single good trick, played at the base of its vanities. It showed a public ready to believe that its queen was exactly what her enemies drew. Foreign, frivolous, faithless. It taught revolutionaries that the monarchy could be wounded by laughter, and that laughter was cheaper than bullets. It taught the monarchy nothing it had not already refused to learn. And yet, in the quiet corners, the human story refuses to be only symbol. Picture Boehmer, the jeweler, in his workshop long after the trial, holding a loupe to a modest stone, and seeing in it the echo of a galaxy he once caged. He sets it into a ring for a bride whose father bargains too hard, and he does not think of queens. Because thinking of queens hurts. Picture Jean in London on a fog-thick morning, staring at the Thames and telling herself that the river's gray is gentler than the Parisian blue she fled, and even she does not quite believe it. Picture Rohan in a monastery garden, hands finally roughening with honest work, whispering psalms and remembering a rose in the dark that was not salvation but felt like it for one heartbeat. Picture Marie Antoinette, long before the blade, at her writing desk, pausing over a sentence to listen to one of her children laughing in the next room. And in that moment, she is not symbol or scandal. She is only a mother whose name will be used for everything, and who cannot stop it. What finally was the necklace? It was a promise that jewels have always made, that beauty can buy absolution, that light can blind justice, that wealth can become a language more fluent than law. The promise failed because promises like that only work in private, and the 1780s were becoming a decade where everything went public. The necklace was also a lesson, that in a world pricing bread by the ounce, a single extravagance, real or imagined, can become a guillotine in words. It was, too, a prophecy disguised as ornament, threaded stones forecasting the shattering of a system that could not tell the difference between shine and substance. The diamonds did not destroy Marie Antoinette. A nation did that. But the affair gave the nation a story to hold while it sharpened its knives. In the Hall of Mirrors today, you can still see the place where the sunlight breaks into 1,000 shards on the floor at noon. A spill of brightness you could almost scoop up with your hands. Visitors tilt their heads and lift their phones and whisper in a dozen languages. The chandeliers sway imperceptibly, as if remembering the day a cardinal's future rattled against their prisms. No necklace lies in a safe waiting to ruin a life. No queen stands accused for jewels she never wore. But if you stand very still and listen to the marble breathe, you can hear paper rustle, ink scratch, heels click, and somewhere a forge tap out a counterfeit signature. You can hear a rose stem snap in a garden cut into the shape of desire. You can hear a nation laughing because laughter, like rumor, is a flame that needs only air. And you can feel, in that bright cold room, how a story can gleam so hard it becomes a blade, and how easy it is, under such light, to mistake reflection for truth.